So you really like the crack, huh?
Yeah, it's incredible, man. It's really incredible. I just did some comparing to the just before we did this. I wanted to compare to the my audio research and pass amp kind of combo, so I can comment on that comparison as well. At least from the brief time I did it.
All right. Sounds pretty. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I'm just gonna intro us. Hey everyone, welcome to the eighth episode of the Good Sound Club podcast. As always, I'm your host, and this week I have a special guest, Small Dactyl of Sonic Visions. I believe you're the creator, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So, what made you want to start a Discord? For viewers that or listeners that don't know, a Discord is similar to a instant messaging application and a forum. It's kind of like a hybrid between the both. So, what made you want to start a Discord?
Well, it was funny because there's a prominent audiophile named Kurawong. I'm sure a lot of people know about Kurawong. He does mainly focuses on headphones and headphone amps and things like that. But anyways, I really enjoyed his YouTube channel and his reviews. So I went, I found a link to his Discord, his server, and I went on it and started chatting with people. This was probably about 4 or 5, I think around 4 years ago, approximately. And then I kind of like in Discord you can kind of mention people for people who don't know, where you can kind of call attention to them. So I kind of mentioned him to ask him a question, and then he got really mad at me and said, don't ever do that again, and don't mention me, and something like that. So then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, wait a minute, like first of all, I thought he's a nice guy. Well, obviously that's not the case, and second of all, why should there be an audio group where everybody's so uptight like this and so aggressive? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I said that why don't
Yeah,
we create a group that's more kind of relaxed, laid back? It's more of a kind of there's more camaraderie and it's more friends, like all talking together. That's what my vision was. I never knew Sonic Visions would grow this much. I thought it would be just a really, really small group of people, but slowly there was kind of a snowball effect, and I think Sonic Vision still has a really small kind of group, small bar kind of feel, like that Cheers kind of
yeah,
feel, but
it does.
it's still growing. So that's what started it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first time I joined, I was told about it, and I didn't quite know what it was, but it does feel like a bar. You can jump in there once in a while, and either have a laugh or talk to some old friends and
Yeah.
maybe joke around a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And what I like about it also is that there's a big diversity of experience there. So you get,
yeah,
of course, people who are kind of novices or people who are new to the hobby always coming in, but then you have people who are kind of, mid-range through their journey, and then you have people who are like veterans or, engineer guys and stuff like that. So you have a huge diversity of experience, and so that makes for great discussion.
yeah. You can talk about almost anything in audio. There's always people that like something or don't like something, and that in itself is entertaining because I don't
Absolutely.
think anyone really takes anything too seriously that anyone else says. But
Right.
it's always fun to get someone's opinion, regardless of if you might want it or not. But usually I think people are pretty respectful to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so wanted to follow that up with your experiences in audio. I mean, you've told me a little bit about your online experience, but maybe how'd you get started in the hobby? What really brought you in? 'Cause you've been in here 4 or 5 years, maybe. Like, what's keeping you here, and what was the, let's say, the initial experience?
Yeah, I started in audio over 10 years ago, and my start in audio was basically the first piece of kind of gear I had was a Super Lux headphone. That was like the first kind of quote unquote audiophile kind of piece of gear I had, and I would be when I was kind of studying abroad and kind of moving from place to place. I kind of always wanted good audio. I would do a lot of studying and reading and that kind of thing. So I would want I like to study with music. And so I noticed like all these like cheap earbuds and stuff like that off of my laptop weren't good. So I got those Super Lux headphones for like, I think at the time was like $50 or $40. And I was blown away when I went from really, really cheap IEMs to the Superlux headphones. And that's what kind of started everything. And then what happened after that was I had that for quite some time. I think probably a year or two. I didn't make any changes. It was right off my laptop. And then I met a friend. His name is Sharoz. He's a quite a prominent audiophile in the HeadFi community, and so he kind of talked to me about audio and started telling me about how there's so much more to audio. You can go so much further. And at the time, he had that. Audio GD Master DAC, and he had
Mm,
I don't know, Singularity I think it was Master 7. He had the Master 9 amp. He had like HE800, and he had like a bunch of different headphones. And once I went over to his house. His other friend brought a HE6 4 or 6 screw, and so we just had like a mini meet basically. I didn't bring anything. I didn't really have much, and so once I heard his gear, that's when my mind was totally blown again. And
yeah.
I that's what really kind of lit a fire under me to really explore further. So eventually, I got my next step was a DT 990.
Okay.
I was just buying things, so I got DT 990s. I did like them at the time. Obviously, now I don't like them that much. So I got the DT 990s, and then eventually I got the HE9 amp, and then I got the Denfrips Terminator DAC,
Okay.
and then and then all my other gear. So that was the start, and that's how I kind of progressed through. And then of course I started to get into speakers, and it was just a domino effect, one after the other.
Yeah, it really it feels exponential, like the growth. Like some
Absolutely,
people, really just want to get to the end, but there's I don't know if there's an end. Do you feel
yeah.
there's an end in audio? I mean, I feel I always enjoy like gear and like the music, but I don't know if I can ever see myself. Yeah, I'm never gonna buy anything again. Like that seems so. I don't know. That seems like too wishful. I think like, can anyone quit? What do you think?
I think that you can get to plateaus, right? You can get to
Yeah.
places where you're satisfied for a long period of time with the sound, and you don't really have interest in going further. But I think that it's hard to say that somebody, as you said, would just kind of put a full stop to it and say, I'm never buying anything again. Because no matter how good the sound is, there's always that voice in your head that says, what if? What if I did something and it took it to another level, right? So
Hmm.
I think it's more kind of long stretches and long plateaus that you can get to depending on how good the system is that you have, and how much you like the system. If you like it a lot, then it's a really long plateau. If you're kind of it's okay, but what can I do to make it better? Then it's a shorter plateau. So that's how I see it.
I see. I see. Like, from I don't want to say a moderator, but like as a form owner, how do you see that in other people? Like, do you see some people go, "Oh yeah, like this is it," and then like, are you happy for them, or do you think, there's just maybe something like a little bit missing, or do you know when people are more dissatisfied than others? Like, what is your view on, I would say, other people in audio?
Yeah, it's tricky because like you always have that, like just to do an analogy with like gaming and PC gaming, like you always have that friend who has like a super old beat up computer and is like playing like some game at like 25 30 fps and is super happy and blown away, and they just don't know that 120 hertz exists and 120 fps exists, and high def
Hmm.
monitors, and so on the one hand you're happy for them because they're super satisfied and super happy, but on the other hand you're kind of thinking, well, if they only knew what is out there, then they could maybe have even higher happiness levels. So that's one thing I think about. And but having said that, going to SV, I mean, there's guys like Nick, for example. He's a veteran and he's been in it for quite some time, but I don't think he's really upgraded or changed much of his system for many, many years. And he's super happy with his system. And then you have people like
Hmm.
or PC Chip, those guys are constantly upgrading, constantly swapping, constantly changing. And so both types of audio files exist, and I don't have a problem with either of them. I think that the issue I have is when there's certain audio. I'm not going to name names, but there's certain audio
Yeah.
files. This is what the guy I'm thinking about is a YouTuber actually,
Okay.
where they have a ton of money and then they're just kind of like blindly throwing money at the problem and buying, expensive things and expend like,
Yeah.
$30,000 power cords and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that to me is not the right approach. The right approach is
Yeah.
very careful, considered, potential upgrading and stuff like that. But anyways, to answer your question, I like both. I'm happy for both types of audiophiles, the
Yeah.
cyclers, the gear cyclers, and the people who are at a big plateau and are really happy.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, I think the plateau is like the goal. You know,
Yeah,
it's kind of awful. Like especially either buying something and taking a huge L, like it breaks or something, or there's like an issue, or you really don't like it, or you
yeah,
pay too much. Like that, that's definitely the worst. You know, that
yeah.
I think that's the only thing that can really get people to quit.
Hmm.
But I definitely agree. Like I enjoy people that are happy. I mean, come on, like how could you not? But I think many
Exactly.
autophiles that are going through a lot of gear tend to be um, dissatisfied with people that don't want to upgrade. You know, that's just it's just like a little bit. It's like how can you think that's good when it's so old? Or I've heard it and I didn't like it, but I think it really comes down a lot to a lot of preferences personally.
Yeah, there's definitely preference factors, but then there's also definitely the factor of like somebody like me, for example, who really enjoy the DT 990, and then if you came along and said, "Hey, there's much better audio than that," and I there is some degree of where some if somebody's introduced to something better, it's like showing them the door, and then if they walk through it, they could potentially have much better audio. Again, there's preferences. I'm sure there's somebody who likes DT 990s more than a black silk 650, who knows, right? But I think that I can understand the frustration where, I mean, the classic example is people coming into SV asking for gaming headset recommendations, right?
Yeah,
Obviously we're going to be frustrated because we know the vast majority of gaming headsets suck, and you can do much better for not much more money. So I understand that frustration, but then I think you make a good point that, be happy for people. If people are happy, be happy for them. Maybe make a recommendation to them. If they don't want to follow your recommendation, don't press them. Let them go. Another example that comes to mind is in SV is I hate to drop all these names because people don't know who these people are, but I believe it was Mabuzo who basically was kind of pushing EQ really hard on me, and he was telling me to get a
mm,
hardware EQ device. And I'm like, nah, I played with EQ. No, I'm not really into it. It usually kind of compromises the sound in other ways when you EQ up the bass or whatever it is.
yeah,
But then when he kind of showed me that, okay, you have to change the digital preamp in Rune, and you have to, he showed me the nuances of it. Then I said, wow, he was right. It actually, it can make a huge difference, and like without a huge drawback, like there is potential there. And it was only when with him constantly like beating on me periodically to try that's when I kind of had that realization. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes you do have to kind of beat on people a little bit.
yeah.
You don't want to go too hard. You don't want to go too aggressive on them. Maybe just once in a while mention something to them. But if they're really really steadfast, just like the gaming headset guys, and you let them on their way.
Yeah, I mean, especially if the advice is not only just free, but like as in, the tweak is free. I think it's
Yeah,
definitely something worth trying. Not
exactly.
like buying a $30,000 cable, like you said. Like I don't,
Yeah,
I don't think that's really good advice for most people because there's so much more, and also I don't know how much that would actually change the sound. But
exactly,
yeah, all right.
exactly.
So next up, gear living up to expectations. What is your take on that? You know, you've recently tried some stuff from the short time I've been in SV. I know you've tried stuff that people recommended. Let's say it's the Imperion. That's one thing I can think of. I don't know if you tried the Hollow May.
No, not the
Maybe
May. No,
no.
I tried the MP though.
Yeah. Tell me about that because I don't know if you still have that.
Well, MP I did an in-store kind of audition off an
Okay.
IFI Diablo amp. So I don't own that, but yeah, in general, I mean, things living up to gear. I mean, I think I've been fairly lucky that all the gear that I've purchased in a kind of sequential fashion, each step of the way, I did get kind of gratification. Like so far, I haven't bought anything where I said, "Oh, this is no good," or "This is not better than what I had before." Like
Hmm.
I've been pretty good at like getting better and better with each purchase. So in that regard, I've been doing well. I think the one interesting thing that your question makes me think about is the whole notion of price, and especially when there's a lot of hype around something that's very pricey and very expensive, but it's not necessarily better. So, for example, when I in the early days of SV, or at least 1 or 2 years ago, I would talk to that guy, Uncle Ruckus. He
Yeah.
has his own headphone that he makes, Ruck phone, or I don't know, the Borealis, right? Borealis in
Yeah.
Australis, and those headphones. And I remember when I talked to him early on, he said that he liked the HD 650 more than Sasvara. And when he said that, I was kind of very shocked. I was kind of blown away. And this was, I guess, part of my learning process, because I thought that, well, I mean, I have the 650, it's fine, but I mean, it's
Mhm.
nothing special. I use it for YouTube mainly. I like my 800 way more. And Sasvara, come on, it's considered the best by so many people in the world. All these prominent YouTubers, Resolve, Critical, all these guys say that Sasvara is the best ever. How could the lowly 650 be better? Now, years later, when I've gone through so much testing and experimenting, now I see what he was talking about. That the potential for gear that, maybe it's not that expensive, but it's about things like synergy, of course, preference. It's about your chain you're running. There's hidden truths in audio that are buried deep down that you need to uncover. And if you are skeptical of people, especially people who are very well respected, like Uncle Ruckus, who are in the know, who are very, very knowledgeable audiophiles, then you're kind of putting your head in the sand, because listen to people who have been in the hobby for a long time, who are respected. And if possible, I'm not saying go out and buy whatever they're saying to that, whatever they're recommending, but at least audition it, or at least try to hear things and then make up your
Mhm.
own mind. Don't be overly skeptical like I was. That's one advice I would give to everybody. One piece of advice.
Yeah, you definitely gotta appreciate the advice. Like, you might not, understand it, but maybe you will grow to like understand the knowledge like later on. For me,
Exactly.
I had it and I was like, what's the big deal? But it really comes down to, like you said, a lot of synergy. And
Mhm.
what was the synergy that really made it shine for you? You would say.
With well, okay, so with 650, what made it shine was putting it on better amplification, right? So when I had it on my HE9, first of all, it was just taking it seriously. That's the first, I think, mistake a lot of people don't make, is they don't take HD 650 seriously. Take it seriously, listen to audio on it, like sit down, listen for hours and hours, and then you'll be shocked at how good the tone is. The tone timbre is so nice on it. But yeah, putting it on better amplification. So when I went from HE9 to Elliott, with my Costler tubes, my clone, the Western Electric clones, I was really impressed at how smooth and liquid, and how kind of beautiful the mid range was. It was really impressive. And then, of course, there's all these vintage memes like Black Silk and all that kind of stuff. So I did manage to get, shout out to Jason, who found a Black Silk for me. So I did get the Black Silk 650, which is a 90s era HD 650. And when I got that, I was shocked at it was significantly better in almost basically every respect to the silver era modern 650 I have. So that was also a huge upgrade. And then putting it on the audio research, I have a Ref 5 SE and a Pass Labs 350.8 amp. You're not supposed to do this, but I did it. I put it on a speaker amp. That was also, then I really started seeing so much potential. How
Yeah.
incredible! Like the sound. What's crazy about the 650 is the scaling ability. When you go from HE9, Elliott, and then Pass, the soundstage each step of the way, just once you go to Pass, it just becomes comically huge, and the imaging becomes incredible. So that's what 650 is really known for, is the scaling ability. And then now my final, or the latest step is, of course, the crack OTL that I just built. That when I put it on that, also again, it's just the tonality, while still being detailed, by while being very, very open, incredible bass, incredible richness and fullness. Right now, it's my favorite headphone that I've ever heard. Right now,
That's great. That's so
yeah,
good. The funny thing is
yeah,
that's like an old like synergy combo people used to talk about
mm-hmm,
all the time. The crack and the
mm-hmm.
HD 650.
Oh yeah, it's
And people scoff at it and they think it's not good. It's like, how can that be good? I'm gonna get a
Well,
Susvara or a Meze or something.
well, here's the thing. See, if I started with the crack and 650 and I was gushing over it the way I am, everybody would hand wave me away and say, "Well, yeah, I mean, okay, fine. I mean, he hasn't heard like the really insane stuff, so that's fine." But I have Elliott here. I have a huge Pass Labs amp here. Like I have gear that's quite good, and it's competing with that. So having said that, I still have a long way in my journey. I still haven't heard
Yeah.
vintage eddy current. I haven't heard DNA. There's still a long way I have to go, I'm sure, but I'll tell you, it's incredible. And considering the price, like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, insane value, insane.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, one of the few times I've heard like all the 650 and 580 memes was at a meet hosted by ETA Headphones in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, and I got to hear
Mm-hmm.
them all. And it wasn't like these were weak chains. It was the Eddy Current stuff. The Mark IV, which is four 283s, I think, and then the Mark V, which is two 283s, and there's Utopia. Like, there's no slouch, and obviously everyone was like, these full cow headphones are cool, but like, come on, like the 650, the 580 are just insane. Well,
Wow.
granted, like these headphone amps are designed for this headphone, so
Right.
it's right. It's a synergy thing, but I definitely agree. Like the 650 is amazing, and it's so hard to beat. And a
Yeah.
lot of people really disparage it and say, how could you buy a $300 headphone and then pair it with like a $3,000 headphone amp? Like
Yeah.
you're doing
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you feel about that? Like, would you think that would be your next step?
You know what? I'm open to I'm open to anything now. Now that we've gone
Mm,
through the OTL experience, like I'm open to everything now, and I do believe when people say that they have like a huge monster, 20K chain behind the 650, and that's their preferred sound. I mean, I believe them now because I mean I've heard Susvara, I've heard Abyss TC, SR1A. I mean, I've heard a lot
yep.
of heavy hitters. Now, I haven't heard them, for many months. So I'd like to hear them again and compare them to, for example, the BS 650 plus crack. I'd love to do that comparison again to see, what happens. But I totally believe people who basically put monster chains behind Sennheiser headphones. I think that is something that a lot of people don't know. I think a lot. If you go on HeadFi and the SummitFi forums, I mean, a lot of people would scoff at that, right?
Yeah,
A
it
lot of
doesn't
people that
exist
have,
there.
yeah, yeah, a lot of people who have, all these super pricey, headphones, they would scoff at that, but I don't think they've tried it. See, that's the other thing is I don't like the people who have Susvara TC. Like you see people literally
Look, all
Solitaire,
of them.
Susvara TC, SR1A, and Elite, like everything is there. And I'm like, has this guy tried a Stellaris with a BS650 or some eddy current vintage with? I bet you they haven't. And if they did, they might be shocked. Now,
Yeah,
of course, a lot of this is preference. My friend Shiroz, the thing he swears by, he's been through a lot of stuff too. What he swears by is SR1A with subs.
yeah.
He has a Coda amp, SR1A, and subs. He swears by that, and he loves it. But he's more of a neutral head. He's more of a
Hmm.
neutral slash treble head. So I can see why. Like I can bring him here, hook him up to my crack OTL, and I'm sure he would appreciate some of the texture there. But I'm sure he wouldn't be satisfied as he is with the SR1A because he wants something different than I want. I'm chasing kind of the emotion, the mid
Yes.
range, hearing the singer's intention. That's what I'm chasing. And anytime I hear my Yamaha speakers, I start crying. I start crying every time I listen to it. I start crying. That's what I want. I don't want every single microcrystalline detail. That can come and go for me. For me, it's all about emotion and immersion.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's something about that emotional connection. Like
Yep.
just yesterday, I went to a concert. I went to go see Yusuf Days. He's a, UK
Mm-hmm.
drummer, and he had his band
Oh,
with
okay.
him, and it was it's a totally different experience. I wouldn't say that was like very detailed or rich. Like, I mean, it was live, so you did get a lot of those textures, but it was also
Mm-hmm.
very very loud. But the whole experience is not the same experience. I would say as to like listening to it on headphones. Not
Right.
because not to say anything against headphones, but I'm just saying like a comparison. Like you can be into the textures, but that's not necessarily the same as like the rhythm or the pacing, because
Right, right,
that can
right.
be very different between live and like a recorded studio session.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So, how did you find that compared to like a good two channel system, like the live versus a good two channel?
Uh, I mean, they can get close, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
there's no way I could ever manage to have like, you know, three 21-inch subs, firing 2 feet in front of me. Like I can't do that. Like I'm sorry, like my neighbors would complain. Like you need to have like legal paperwork to be able to play that kind of music
Yeah.
that loud.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean,
For
it's not gonna
sure.
be the same, but some headphones get definitely close, and that's like as best as we can get, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that that's a whole other thing, and I don't know if we want to get into that, but speakers are another thing where it's your mind gets blown when you have even a humble
Yep.
setup with speakers, and you come from high end headphones. Again, it's like the analogy I would give is going from 3D gaming to VR. Like when you go to VR, the level of immersion increases, and it's just
Yeah.
incredible. So
The
that's yeah.
fidelity might not, but the definitely the immersion.
You know what I find personally with speakers is that a lot of people mention that about the fidelity, that a lot of people mention about the resolution, detail, clarity with the
Yep.
headphones oftentimes superior, because obviously the room is going to color things and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. But what I find is that with with speakers, you get this spatial resolution and imaging resolution, or a greater appreciation of the nuances of the sound that you miss with headphones, because with headphones, uh, everything is essentially very compressed and kind of in your head. Even with Abyss TC is probably the best I've heard in terms of soundstage and imaging, and even with that, I directly compared the Abyss TC off of my huge pass speaker amp. I compared it to my Yamaha speakers, and I laughed out loud when I compared it because of how compromised the TC sounded in every possible imaginable way. I don't think there was any way TC was better than my speakers. So that's another paradigm kind of shift that a lot of people, I think, don't make. A lot of people, especially the hardcore head-fi people,
Mhm.
that they are skeptical of speakers. They think they need an ultimate treated studio with
No.
insane money in the wall treatments and stuff like that. But it's not true. My room is crap, and it still blows away any headphone I've ever heard in my life. So that's something that I would really
Yeah.
encourage people to get, even budget speakers. Get some basic speakers in there, and you'll be amazed.
Yeah, a few episodes ago, Cena recommended me to buy some like these vintage speakers on eBay. They were like $60. I was like, "What the heck?" I spent I spent more money in like really bad restaurants, so what's the worst that can happen? And they're absolutely insane. I mean, it's not
Wow.
just
Which
that they're
speakers? What speakers are they?
they're really cheap and they kind of suck.
Okay.
But that tells you like
Yeah.
they're not top of the line in the 60s or in the 70s. They're kind of like middle range, I would guess.
Right.
But it's different. It's so different that
Mm.
the things you look for in a headphone is not the same things you would look for in a speaker. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
and I would go as far as to say that you wouldn't look for the same thing in a dynamic headphone that you would a planar or an
Right. Right. Right.
electrostat or a ribbon.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's really like apples to oranges to bananas, to like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever. But
Right. Right.
it really is preference, but you can enjoy it all. I don't think you
True.
got to pick
True.
one, and it's not
That's
really
true.
like, am I right? Are you wrong? It's like we can all be right to some extent. It's
Yep.
just if you're willing to explore these new things, and not everything can fit anyone's budget, but it's really important, I think, to try to
Yep.
find something that is good for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree with that.
yeah. So next up, price to performance. I mean, you've gone up and
Mm-hmm.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, how much do you think price really matters to performance?
Well, I when I was starting out, I used to think that a lot of people, as a lot of people say, you get what you pay for, right? That's what I used to think. But now I know that's not true at all. I think that there are I think that people have to be careful, because a lot of gear out there, it's kind of like what Zach always says. A lot of stuff is fashion-fi. It's
Mm,
dressed up, it's made beautiful, and then there's obscene prices that are charged for gear. when something much more budget or much more maybe something DIY can perform at the same level or better, or you'll like it better and you'll pay way less money, right? So I think that the old I mean, up to a certain level, I think that is probably true. So like below like $100 or maybe 200-300 bucks, you know, as you pay more, you will probably get better sound, right? Like a $5
Yeah.
IEM versus a $50 IEM. I mean, there's no question the $50 will be better. But once you get past, I would say 500 to 1,000, it's very much a game of preferences, synergy. Just having the right chain, having everything dialed in. You can't really just look at price. And as you get, and I think that there's a cutoff point where going above that is probably just stupid, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I've heard very very expensive systems, and although they've sounded good, now I'm very convinced based on my experiences that a lot of that sound, if not all of that sound, can be achieved for far less money. And a lot of it is just like name brand clothes, right? You
Yep.
who some people pay, you know, $500 for a T-shirt because it's a certain brand and it has like a little tear that was a fashion tear or whatever it is. So you got to be really careful with the price to performance stuff. Don't use that as a metric for deciding whether something performs well. Listen to stuff. Listen to people who are experienced. If you find somebody who has similar preferences to you, listen to what they say when you're auditioning things. And don't be skeptical just because something is not that expensive. We talked about the 650s. That's a perfect example. It's not that expensive. Crack OTL, not that expensive, incredible amplifier. So yeah, you can't just use price to gauge performance.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like with these speakers, I mean, they're very cheap, and I compared them to, I wouldn't say like AB because I don't like to AB because I think it's kind of exhausting. It kind of removes
Mhm.
the enjoyment factor for me personally. But
Right.
I would say I compared them to my previous ones, which were the Emotivas, which cost about 3 times as much, and then these other speakers, they're like LS35A clones, which are 8 times as much, and I would say these beat them in almost every single way. But of course there's some inconveniences in the price, and you do get something more, like it might be prettier, it might fit your desk better, the aesthetics are definitely there, maybe a nicer binding post, it's
Hmm.
it's so small that sometimes it's not really about the sound, and you can find good stuff that's kind of ugly. But
Right.
if you really want it to look pretty, I mean, you can definitely find stuff that fits your fashion style, as you said, like fashion fi.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Now, I wanted
Definitely.
to ask you. I only have two more questions, but let me check the time.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. DIY. Was this your first time DIYing the crack?
Yeah, this is the first DIY build I've ever done.
How'd you feel it was? Was it easy? Was it hard? How was the
It
guidebook?
was much harder than I thought it would be. I underestimated it for sure. Now I suck. I'm not a super technical guy. When I never soldered before. This is my first time ever soldering. So I mean, keep that in mind. If anybody has some level of experience, I think they would think it's a lot easier than I did. But I found the instructions pretty good for the most part. There's a couple times when I think their lengths might have been a bit wrong, possibly, or it might have been just my build. But overall, the instructions were really, really good. There were big delays in shipping, which was kind of a downer, and communication wasn't necessarily the best. Like I emailed them a couple times and they wouldn't reply. So, but when I called them, they did pick up and they were pretty friendly on the phone. So overall, I wouldn't complain about them. And yeah, and I think it's very time consuming. Like it took me a lot longer than I thought it would. I did make a bunch of mistakes though that set me back. I think if somebody is even, I'm not saying some engineer or technician, I'm not talking about that, but even somebody
Hmm.
who's has knows their way around an iron and has some experience, I don't think they'll have too much problems. I think it'll be fairly straightforward for them.
Yeah, and I noticed that you had, like, your whole community support there, and you would ask
Yeah,
them questions that will help you
yeah.
out, kind of guide you. How did that feel? Like knowing that your community was there to support you in your journey.
Yeah, that was incredible. That's one of the things I said it before, that SV feels like my family. Like I love these guys so much. They're so nice, so supportive. That's one of the greatest. Like I'm not like some discords where people are getting Patreon money and getting funding. I don't get nothing. I don't get a single dime, and I put money into it with the website and whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm so happy to do that. What I get something much more valuable, which is the camaraderie, the friendship, the support, the knowledge that helps me grow as an audiophile. And it was amazing when I was live streaming and people would pop in. I love that. And then when I was really frustrated with the build, and I would message people, they would encourage me. One guy, I think his name was Bruno. He actually came on a Discord call with me. He's a like an engineer tech guy, and just kind of started walking me through like things that I could do to fix my build and improve the build. And then the Bottlehead forum was actually good too, at helping me kind of figure out like kind of what was wrong and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I am amazed by SV in that regard, of how nice they are, how generous they are with their time, with their experience. And that's one reason, for your listeners, I encourage you guys, come to SV and hang out and check it out, because it's a great community.
Yeah, a lot of nice guys and a lot of funny guys too. And
Absolutely.
gals. There's gals too.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I couldn't do this episode if I didn't ask you this, but what is waffling?
So if you open a dictionary and look up waffling, you'll see my picture there. So basically, yeah, waffling is when you just agonize over a decision, and especially when you're very indecisive, you agonize, and especially part of waffling, in my opinion, is involving other people in the waffle. So you're kind of telling other people about your agonizing decision. You're trying to ask for advice, and when people give you advice, you kind of ignore it and then still just stay on the fence, and you're in a state of perpetual non decisiveness, basically. So that's what waffling is. I've done it a lot in my days. I still do it to some degree. And yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that gear in general is really expensive. I'm not some rich guy that has a lot of money like Co, or one of these rich dudes. So for me to drop some cash, I mean, I have to really think hard about it, and be very careful. And so that's part of it. But part of it is also just, it's just this a quality of being, I guess, being worried about the outcome, and trying to, like, it almost feels like, if you waffle enough, you'll come to an outcome that will be safe. And
Yeah.
sure, you have to do research. Research is important, but beyond, once you get to a certain point, like, it's not going to help anymore, and you just have to pull the trigger on something and hear it and listen to it, right? That's and unfortunately, because we're in COVID time, that makes things also a lot harder, because you can't really go out and audition things or convince people as much to let you borrow things. So that makes waffling worse too. But yeah, that's something that I'm definitely guilty of, and something that hopefully I'll improve and not do it so much.
I personally think it's quite healthy. I mean, just like,
Mm.
do we really always want to be convinced to buy everything? I mean, I don't think so. But I think it's like healthy skepticism, or being indecisive. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's definitely rewarding when you're like, okay, I really thought this decision out. This is definitely what I'm gonna get, and whether you hear it or not, I mean, it's always nice to know that other people really enjoy it, or it worked out for them and it was easy. Like, I wasn't there for your decision making to buy a crack. What was the decision making like? Who brought it up to you?
That's a good point. I don't think I waffled much on that, because the price wasn't that high, and the reason, I think I believe I'm the one that, well, okay, a few people actually pointed out the crack to me, because I was wanting a much warmer sound. The reason I actually even got the crack was, I've been on this big huge quest to make the HD800S warmer and more kind of pleasing,
Yeah.
because the problem I have with it is, and bassier too. The problem I have with it is that it is sometimes a bit thin and hollow sounding to me, and it's a bit
Yeah.
lacking in the bass. So that's the whole. So I've been chasing kind of warmer amps. So that's why one reason I got the Elliott. Elliott is not necessarily that much warmer; it's more neutral. And then I got warm tubes for the Elliott. I got mullered input tubes. I got a Coster Western Electric clones. So that helped a bit. That helped to warm things up and bring more tonal kind of balance there. And then people were saying that crack is like what I was asking people is, because people are always say
How do you?
goo, or
Yeah.
this is like goo, or woo audio is like goo and all that kind of stuff. I said that, well, I want to hear goo. I want to hear what it sounds like, because maybe I like that. I don't know, right? Now,
Hmm.
how do I get into that kind of sound without spending thousands and thousands of dollars? And then I think a bunch of people, Fammy, and I think a bunch of people mentioned crack, and they specifically said, don't do speedball upgrade, just do the OG crack OTL. And so as soon as they said that, it wasn't much waffling. I just did it because it was like, it wasn't that much money, right? It was like
Low
500
barrier.
bucks for yeah, 400 or 500 bucks. So I just did it, and then that was it. And then the rest is history.
Nice. That's great. I'm really happy you're enjoying it as much as you are.
Yeah, it's amazing,
Um,
man.
it- do you think you're going to speedball, or do you think you're going to go Krakatoa, or
I
maybe
don't
you're just going to
know.
go
I
some
don't know.
woo or something else?
I
Maybe later on. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I just
I I don't know. I do know that I'm pretty focused on at some point DNA for sure, Donald North
hmm
Audio, because that is supposed to be the holy grail of balancing, like the holy grail for a warmer sound, warmer, and they people say quote unquote wet. I still don't know really what that means, but warm, wet, rich, kind of euphonic kind of sound, or Zek's most hated term, musical. That if he hears that, he's gonna like stab me. But
yes.
yeah, the Donald North, at some point I do want to get into that. If something pops up for sale, I plan on probably selling this Elliott most likely, and then if something pops up for sale, use that money to get that, or just get in line. But in terms of the bottlehead, I'm still thinking about it. Parker is really pushing me to do these bypass caps. He says just do that, and then maybe do a potentiometer
hmm
upgrade, and then leave the speedball, because speedball will make it a lot more neutral, which is not what I want. I want this
Okay.
tone. And then, but I think there are other upgrades that you can do that maintain the tone. The other thing I'll tell you, Tom, that I'm interested in is the bottlehead pre. That's what I'm really thinking about now, even more than another headphone amp, because I want to try to bring some of this warm tube sound to my speakers,
Makes
because
sense.
I have the ATCs, the SCM7 at my on my desk in my near field
hmm
setup, and I find them a little bit fatiguing, a little bit too neutral for me. So if I can if I can build a bottlehead pre and compare it to my audio research, and who knows, I might like the bottlehead more. I'll sell off the audio research, pocket all the money, and I'll have a sound that I like more.
That that sounds like a perfect idea to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of strange for a lot of people that are like a Summit Fi like focus. It's like, how could you ever consider a bottlehead preamp when the preamp you have currently? What is it again?
It's a audio research Ref 5 SE.
Yeah, I think that one has like a huge like number on the front of the screen when you turn it or something, or
Yeah, yeah, it
the
has a
volume.
big display. It has a big display, and it's really well respected in the two channel world. Like, it's
hmm
considered one of those really impressive amps, and that balances like tube tonality and sound staging and imaging with like a still a faster sound, like a more resolving, detailed sound. So, and I do love it though. But by the way, like
That's good.
by the way, the arc plus pass combination, especially with my Yamaha speakers, I told you I cry every time I listen to it. It's so amazing. But having said that, now with this with the crack, I don't know. I think anything's possible, and it's possible I might like the bottlehead preamp more. It's possible, I think.
Yeah, I 100% believe it.
Yeah,
Whenever
it's
whenever
amazing.
that comes back in stock, maybe it might be worth checking out.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
definitely, I think the bypass caps is a good move.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, most
Mm-hmm.
of them are cheap,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you can even try some vintage ones. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll see. Like, I know a lot of people cap roll the other caps that are in there. So that's another thing that I would look into. I have to research. Like, I see the trick is that I have to find somebody who kind of likes the warmer tone that I like, and I know a lot of people prefer like a more kind of neutral, kind of faster sound. So if I find somebody that has similar preferences to me, then I can kind of look at their recommendations for upgrading.
Yeah, I had sent you a recommendation when I was looking at your crack impressions online, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cena actually told me to recommend you those paper and oil caps.
Oh yeah, and then I saw it. It was the one that looks like those boxes, right?
They look like
Boxes, yeah,
they look
silver
like
boxes.
boxes for like bullets or something. They're
Yeah, yeah,
gigantic.
yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
absolutely massive, but it's because the size. I mean, it would have to be that massive. That's just
Right.
yeah. That's why it's so expensive too, because they're giant. But plus 10, minus 10 tolerance, they're probably still good. But I've definitely
The
tried something cheaper as a bypass instead of a full capacitor replace, probably
right,
to get you to the
right.
target sound you're after.
Right, for sure. Yeah, but and that's what's so cool about DIY is that whenever I have, and if anybody's ever thinking about doing this, like I strongly encourage it, do it because it's really worth it. Because not only do you have an awesome sounding amp, you haven't spent that much money. You spend a lot of time, that's true, but you haven't spent a ton of money, and you have something that you it's kind of special because when you listen to it and you look at it, you're like, I made that, right? And that I don't know, it's different than it just buying something off the shelf that you haven't made. I think there's something to be said for that. And if anybody's interested in trying it, I strongly recommend trying out Bottlehead. Their stuff is so far. I'm amazed by their stuff.
Honestly, I've never thought you'd recommend them, but Parker recommended them in the past, and
Hmm.
you too. So I'm definitely interested. I think
Yeah.
I'd lean a little bit more like of a balance between the warm and the more neutral sound. So I might try Krakatoa.
Or yeah, maybe mainline. I know mainline is much more neutral, but who knows? If you like a faster sound, you might like mainline. I've read on the forums people who've have all three. They have the Krakatoa and mainline, and they end up preferring them, like listening to the mainline more. So I
Hmm,
get it. It all comes down to preferences. But
preference.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Krakatoa is probably a really smart starting point.
Yeah, I mean, as a speedball, I like the 6080 output tube, and but I think
Hmm.
I might modify the gain tube to be a 6S N7 or maybe 6S L7, depending
Hmm.
if I want more or less distortion. Because I don't know if you know this, but the 6S N7 is one of the most neutral and linear tubes ever made, and that's why it's so popular in so many preamps.
Oh, interesting, interesting. What gear are you running right now?
A Valley One.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, no,
and
I've sold almost everything off, and the Valley One, I that is like my one. It's a small. I wrote a small article on it. It's a small, directly heated triode. I mean, a pentode that's triode strapped, so it lowers the input resistance, and it is just a crazy hybrid. I love hybrids. Apparently, it's a sound not a lot of people like, but I definitely like them. So I'm gonna mod that. I ordered the vintage parts that I would jokingly say will blow it up, and when that happens, I'll let everyone know.
just like that's what Parker said. He's like, "Oh, you try to kill Smod with those caps."
No, no, no.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right. So
What headphones are you using?
right now I'm using a Grado 60E that I got $40, which I think was a
Oh
great
yeah,
deal. But
right.
my favorite headphone at the moment that I own is a Meze 99. As much as people hate it, I think it's not that bad. I modded
Mm-hmm.
it so it
Mm-hmm.
has a much less
Mm-hmm.
bass. It doesn't have a 15 dB bass
Oh,
boost
cool,
anymore,
cool.
so it's much more neutral. I like closebacks. That's just my preference. I like closebacks.
Well, one thing we should definitely do because I'm interested in asking you a lot of questions and getting into your kind of history because I don't know much
Hmm.
about your journey. So we should have you on SV. We're going to do the Group SV podcast. I think tomorrow. I think you're going to be joining us. I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, we'll see how it goes. But because if there's a lot of people, then everybody's talking. So we should do a one-on-one with you on SV, like a special
Oh, that'd be
edition.
cool.
I'd like to do that where I kind of pick your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I've since starting this and joining a Good Sound Club, and all the mentorship I've received, I definitely understand my opinion and what I'm after.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say simply, I think DIY is probably the only choice, or
Mm-hmm.
finding
Mm-hmm.
something semi vintage and fixing it. I think that's the only choice for me. I think.
I was talking to one guy, Arrow or Erroneous, right? I don't know how you say
Yeah,
his
yeah,
name, but
yeah.
he was on SV,
Austin.
and yeah, yeah, exactly. And he basically said that there's a progression that you have to go through, almost like some kind of like some kind of like you know
It's so right.
educational kind of progression, like high school, junior high, high school, and he was saying that progression is basically
650.
some so yeah 650 with some kind of tube app, I guess, like something like bottlehead. Then you go up to DNA, and then you go up to custom, basically. And then when I was trying to find out, okay, well, which custom maker, there's not many good
Oh,
custom makers that people recommend. He told me, quit trying to cut the line, go through it the way you're supposed to go through it.
yeah.
So that was interesting.
I think not to make this episode too long, but I think when you do try to cut the line, I think that's you lose some of it. You lose some of
Mm,
the fun. You can't
right.
experience the incremental upgrades, right? If you just get there, then you just gotta like if you're at like I don't want to say this, but at $10,000 DAX, what's the step up?
Yeah.
$20,000 DAX? I mean, is that fun? I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of DAX, but that's a different story. But I have heard custom tube amps, and some of them are very esoteric, and it, they sound nothing like anything you could possibly ever buy. And the Valley
Mm,
One is the closest thing I have to that, so that's why I enjoy it so much. See, it brings
nice.
me that sense of nostalgia, that feeling. It has the Manny has flaws, but trust me, this custom amp had much worse flaws.
Wow, wow.
It was much worse, but the sound
And it
was
was
so
much,
incredible.
and it was much more expensive, I'm assuming.
It wasn't that expensive, but
Oh, okay, okay,
yeah, but
okay, fair.
yep. So brings us to the final topic. Music of the week recommendations. Start off with Nilüfer Yanya, and she has this album called Painless. Absolutely incredible. I don't even know what I would describe it as, but it's kind of atmospheric. It's kind of progressive. I'm gonna call everything jazz. I just call it everything jazz rock. If I like it, it's probably jazz rock. It's so good. Track 4 through 6, I'm just blown away. What a journey!
Hmm.
I absolutely love that.
Nice, nice,
Yeah. Do you have
nice.
any album recommendations?
Yeah, I can throw one out there. So one of my favorite singers, her name is Rebecca Jean Elliott, and her album is called I Just Might. And I think it's the only album she has, but she has an incredible voice, and almost every track on there I love. And yeah, check it out. It's basically soft, female soft vocals and jazz, essentially, is what it is. And it's really an awesome album.
Nice. Well, that will conclude the 8th episode of the Good Sound Club podcast with my special guest, Smodactyl of Sonic Visions. Thank you very much, Smod, for joining us in this episode, and thank you for showing everyone, your progression of your journey and where you think you're going to go next.
Thank you very much, Tom, for having me. Shout out to all the Good Sound Club people. Shout out to Sina. And yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.